Welcome to the third of four presentations by vendors who have been kind enough to come in to help educate us about the state of the learning management systems, the digital learning environment. As everyone is aware, the main LMS that we are using on campus, Blackboard Learn. Some in the School of Media and Design in particular have been using Canvas, so for some this presentation might be a bit familiar for you, and for others it might not. The idea of these presentations really is for information as to what's happening in the field. We are soliciting your feedback through these forms, among other things. We also have the surveys online. Through our website, and then later on in the fall, after the RFP has been issued and the vendors have been identified or shortlisted, then we'll get into more of the use case scenarios and the testing and the playing in the sandboxes, if you will. I'd like to point out the Learning Management Steering Committee members that are here by having them raise their hand. Thank you very much, or the members of our Learning Management System Steering Committee. Myself, I'm Patrick Devey. I'm the co-chair of the committee. I'm the dean of the Center for Continuing and Online Learning. For those I haven't met, hello, bonjour. I'm co-chairing with Maggie Pousson, the dean of academic development. So, what I'd like to just make sure of is our rules of order. We're going to let our vendors present. If they are open to quick questions during the session, I'll leave that up to them. They will have until 1 o'clock, in which case I will have to close up the shop to let you go on your way, and to be fair to the other presentations thus far. Hi Maggie, there's Maggie. Essentially, again, this is an opportunity for us to be educated a bit more as to what's happening in the market so that we can make together an informed decision as to where we'd like to go with our learning environment going forward. Okay? So without further ado, I'd like to present David and Stan from Instructure. We will present Canvas. Gentlemen.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm Stan Wendt. I'm the Regional Director for Higher Education Canada. So basically I cover all of Canada for enterprise opportunities, so 3,500 FT student counts and above. By a show of hands though, can I see how many are students here?
Go Victoria.
Yeah, we got a student. Faculty, administration, support type roles. Okay, perfect. So I really don't want to spend too much time walking through a deck. You know, it's lunchtime on a Wednesday. I'm sure you don't want to see a deck. I don't want to give a deck. But I do want to give you an idea of who we are. So I'm going to keep it to 4 slides, I promise. Canvas was founded in 2008 by those two gentlemen there, Brian Whitmer and Devlin Daly. So they were students at Brigham Young University. And like other students, they were frustrated with their learning management system. It was unreliable, it was going down quite a bit. And they were in a course taught by this guy right here, Josh Coates, who's our existing CEO today. And he had just sold his company, Mosey, off to EMC. So he was connected in the venture capitalist space. He knew some venture capitalists, and he invited them to help him grade this final presentation, per se, of this course, this computer science course. And what was the assignment? Taking existing technology today that you feel is flawed, and how you would improve it and how you would market it. So naturally, they took their LMS. At the end of that presentation, the venture capitalist went up to Josh and said, those guys, they got an idea. We want to invest in them. We believe in this. He goes, well, let's hold our horses. Let's then have them do a product validation tour. So this is legendary story at Instructure. They got in their car from Salt Lake City. They drove down to San Diego, Los Angeles, went through California, up the coast to Oregon, Washington State, came back. And what did they gather? Well, you can imagine tons of data. They met a lot of schools. And it really boiled down to 3 different things. So if you're going to enter this market that is pretty saturated already at this point, you got to do things differently. And so what they did is they identified 3 themes that would really set them apart. It seems very simple, but ease of use is one of them. These solutions weren't easy to use. And because they're not easy to use, they weren't adopted. And so that's really a waste of money investing in a tool that doesn't get used. So in Canvas from the very beginning is all about ease of use, user design, user experience, and design. So we follow the golden rule of design. So that's the very first piece about it. Canvas, we've been from the very beginning really, really like ridiculously easy to use. Number 2, openness. Openness means a lot of things to many people, but trying to make it very simple, You have a lot of different tools that you want to integrate into an environment. You want LDAP for authentication. Perhaps you want to integrate other tools for the course. Typical LMSs are really complex to do this with. They use something, with Blackboard, building blocks. You would have to use building blocks. Canvas wanted to make it really, really easy to do that, so we published an open API, api.unstructure.com. You can go to that website. Anyone who's technical and loves to develop, you can build tools directly into Canvas. And because we're cloud-based, anything that you build in that tool is not going to break when their next release comes out. So that's openness, open standards. So we're very involved in the IMS Global. We've got 12 certifications, the most up-to-date certifications from any of the vendors out there. Security, we have an open security audit, whereby we're the only LMS vendor that does this. We've challenged the other guys to do that. They have not taken us up on it yet. That open API, that open security audit is available for public to take a look at. canvaslms/security.com. canvaslms.com/security. So let's fast forward today. So the third one, sorry. And probably one of the most important ones, reliability. When an LMS goes down, the users lose confidence in that tool. And they don't want to use that tool anymore. Why it goes down is irrelevant to an end user. If it's down because of maintenance, they don't care, but they know it's down. If it's down because there's a power outage, it's still down. So in 2008, and this is really forward thinking, they decided that the LMS has to go in the cloud. And not just any cloud, AWS. From the very beginning, we've been on AWS, and the other vendors are starting to go there now, but we've been there since 2008. So where are we today? 900, well, that's out of date actually. We're 1,000 employees and above now. 2,000 plus clients, 50 million worldwide subscribers, and 100% cloud. This is from last year, and from List Ed Tech, which is actually out of Ottawa. This graph shows you the percentage of new implementations by product, primary LMS only. So if you look at last year, it's about 80%. We did 80% of the new LMS implementations last year up to June. The data, we don't have data after that, they didn't publish it. But the very recent report came out, again, that Canvas is the fastest growing LMS out there. So who are our clients? Most of the Ivy League, Stanford, Chicago, Penn, Brown, SFU, Algonquin as well, Faculty of Arts, Media and Design, as we've talked about. And so I'm going to pass it on to David because we believe Canvas really speaks for itself, so I don't want to go too much into this. And I'll pass it on to David to demo Canvas.
Sir. So just by way of a quick introduction for myself, I've been with the company for about 2.5 years. But before that, I was a customer for 2 years. So I've spent a lot of time kind of on your side of this conversation, right? I've done the evaluations, I've gone through a migration. We moved the entire University of Colorado Denver and Anschutz Medical Campus off of Blackboard and eCollege onto Canvas. And then I stayed on after that process was finished and did faculty training. And I also actually adjunct for their College of Education to try and stay close to the faculty experience. So I spent a lot of time with LMSs on the student side. My entire master's degree was online, but then also on the staff and instructor side as well. And in the time we have, I would love to invite folks to ask questions. I know it's tough to just have someone talk at you for 50 minutes, so if anybody has questions, please raise a hand. But we definitely won't have time to look at everything, right? Canvas is a powerful platform. The blend of extensions is endless because we adhere to those open standards like LTI and our open API. So we definitely won't get to see everything. What I really would love for folks to focus on, though, is that user experience. There are certain things that I think are kind of in the LMS that we sort of expect to be there. Like it has discussions and you can submit assignments and you can take quizzes, right? These are kind of the table stakes in the LMS. But what it's actually like to use those tools, whether or not instructors are going to use them, whether or not students are going to use them, whether or not they're going to want to teach their courses in those tools, that's where we really start to see, I think, a huge deviation. And so that's what I would love for you guys to kind of focus on. And this really starts here. My goodness, I'm under attack. It really starts here on the dashboard. As you can imagine, someone in a position like mine where I kind of wear multiple hats at the same time, I'm a student and a teacher and an administrator all at once, I don't have multiple accounts in Canvas. So if you're a student over here and a teacher over here, or you're a student and a TA, or you're a teacher, but you're also a student because you're doing some professional development, you don't have to have multiple accounts. The dashboard is just always going to show you the courses that you're in, and you're going to have the correct access to those courses. So when I log in, I know that I'm seeing my current courses. I don't have to go in and manually update this every term. It just always shows me my current courses. And when I look at these, on this business telecom, for example, this color and this name for this course are actually something I can set. So I can say something like my favorite course, and I can give it a different color, maybe a nice chipper pink. Right, and now because that's for my organization, that color and that nickname are going to carry everywhere. So on the calendar, that's what I'll see. In the free mobile apps, that's what I'll see, right? Those are there for my organization of these courses. So I can set this as an instructor. My students can have totally different colors, totally different nicknames, right? On these tiles, I also have these tool icons, and any of them, like in my psychology course that have activity, will get a little notification right on it. So the second I come to the dashboard, I not only see which courses need my attention, but more specifically, do they have activity? This one has some announcement activity. These courses don't have any activity right now, so I can not concern myself with them. And then similarly on the side, I have this to-do list, and you'll see throughout Canvas that we try really hard to automate the things we can. I try in my life to never say, I will save you time, not just because it's a terrible tech cliche, but because I can't actually do that for any of you. I can't give you more time than you have now. What I can do is automate the boring stuff, streamline the other stuff, right? And then let you really focus the time you have, the limited time we all have, on the things that are important. So this to-do list is a great example of that because this automatically happens. So because I'm an instructor in all these courses, I'm seeing work that my students have turned in. So I have a few papers that were submitted. I have a couple quizzes and discussions that were turned in. If I'm a student, I would see items that I need to submit. So take this quiz, post this discussion, submit that assignment. And then these are all live links as well. So if I press on one of these, it actually takes me directly to that item. Yeah, go ahead.
As a faculty member, can I disable that feature?
Disable it for yourself?
Two.
You want to disable
Can I
this?
make them go into my course without clicking directly to the quiz from their homepage?
So you wouldn't be able to turn off their to-do list, but they can always get to it through your course as well as through the to-do list.
But I can't disable the hyperlink.
You cannot. So from here, if I want to go into one of these items, if I'm a student, it takes me to where I make my submission. If I'm an instructor, it takes me to where I'm doing my grading. But then when that item is completed, it comes off the to-do list. So this isn't something we want folks to have to micromanage, right? We want it to just be there for them. Now on my calendar, are you guys by any chance Google School, Office 365 School, either of those? Office? And is that campus-wide for all students, all faculty, all staff, everybody? Okay. So you've probably used Outlook or the Outlook on the web calendar. So this calendar view might be quite familiar to you. It's a single layered view of all of my courses, right? You can see them over here on the side. Each course gets its own calendar. Those colors and those nicknames, like I said, carry over automatically. So I don't have to set those in multiple places. I set it one place and it's true everywhere. And then if I want to, I can toggle these on and off. So I don't have to see all of my courses at once if I don't want to. As an instructor or a student, I can press on any of these items and I can see the content for it. So this happens to be a discussion prompt. So I'm seeing the prompt for the discussion. If it's quiz, I see the quiz instructions. If it's an assignment, I see the assignment instructions. But really the faculty favorite feature, the favorite thing for instructors on the calendar is if you're thinking about your course in kind of a week 1, week 2, week 3, right? What are we doing next week? What are we doing the week after? You might look at your calendar and say, you know what? This discussion is due on Tuesday, but I'd really rather it was due on Wednesday. If I just click and drag this over, that due date is updated everywhere now, right? So my students' to-do list is updated, my syllabus is updated, my modules are updated, my notifications have gone out to my students that due date has changed, right? I don't have to go find all of the places that the due date shows up. I just know if it's set right anywhere, it's set right everywhere. And then because we don't really expect anyone to put things like pick up the kids, dentist appointment onto their LMS calendar, you can feed this out to a tool like Outlook or Google Calendar or an iPhone calendar so that if any changes happen in Canvas, they will actually feed out to that external calendar as well.
Can you share external calendars into the Canvas calendar?
No, it's a one-way push. Yeah, because we don't want people accidentally syncing personal things in.
And can an SIS put a student's timetable into the calendar automatically?
The short answer is yes, but there's a longer discussion to be had there.
can one instructor view their calendar plus another instructor's calendar?
You can view any calendar you have access to. So any courses that I'm enrolled in, if I'm co-instructing with another instructor, I would see that right here in my calendar list. And then if I want to toggle those on and off, now I'm looking at just mine and theirs, just theirs. Yeah. And I mentioned kind of casually notifications in there. So the LMS kind of historically has been a sort of lightweight email client. I know we only have 1 or 2 students in the room, but I think it's fair that students don't love their student email, right? Is that a fair statement? Okay. Thank you. You just spoke for the entire student body. I appreciate that. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Yeah. So you really do just speak for the entire student body. And I don't think instructors and staff really love. We don't want more email, right? Email is something we do because we kind of have to, not because it's like our favorite way to communicate. So we didn't want to just make Canvas into another email client. So it functions as what we think of as a message broker. So what you're seeing here is all of the different things Canvas can notify me about, messages, due date changes, announcements in my course, and then the channels that I can be notified through. So by default, everybody would have their school email address in there automatically, so they don't have to set that up. But then they can add other channels, social channels like Twitter and LinkedIn, phone number if they want to get text messages. My favorite, and I think by far the most popular, is actually probably the push notifications to those iOS and Android mobile apps I mentioned. Those are particularly cool because they're all interactive. So if I'm a student and I get a notification that a due date on an assignment is changed, when I press on that notification, it opens up the Canvas app and it takes me to that assignment. If there's a new discussion post, I press on that, it opens up the Canvas app and it takes me directly to that discussion post, right? So I can use these notifications not just to know that a thing happened, but to actually take action, right? And because we all have our smartphones and our tablets with us increasingly everywhere we go, we know that people want to actually be able to take action. They don't just want to know that a thing in their course changed.
Seeing as you're talking about that, is there any difference in functionality between the PC version of Canvas and the mobile version?
So there is. So with the laptop desktop environment version, right, what you would get in a web browser, this is what we think of as the Canvas web app. The mobile experience, because you have a different screen size, and more importantly, you have different input-output, we sat down with our mobile app, and the question we wanted to answer was, can a student take their entire course from their phone? Can they view all the content? Can they post discussions, submit assignments, take quizzes? So that's what we built that app for. It's, can I interact with a course and take that entire course? And the answer is yes, they can. For an instructor, we are pretty firmly committed that building an entire course with your thumbs would not be awesome. So we have, this summer, we're actually bringing out our dedicated teacher app. So right now, an instructor can use the Canvas app to interact with a course, right? Because they may be participating in discussions, they may be viewing content about the course. But we did a lot of research last year and found that there are instructor activities that make sense on a mobile phone, but trying to take the entire web experience and just shove it down to phone size is not really what we think is the best way to go. And the reason we've chosen to go with those mobile apps instead of just a responsive website is because we'll see in Canvas there's a lot of places where you can do rich interactivity, which on a mobile device you cannot do through the browser because of the way the browsers are set up security-wise. So going with the mobile apps means we can use the camera with your permission, and we can do push notifications with your permission, which we just can't do through the browser. And we know that folks really want those features. So let me jump into a specific course here. And I apologize, I do have to kind of look down. So if somebody has a question and I haven't called on you, just shout or toss a can or something. But I've come into my Intro to Psychology course here. I'm on my homepage. One of the nice things we do on a Canvas homepage is I still have that to-do list, but now it's scoped down to just this course. So now, instead of seeing everything that I have to do, I know I'm just in the context of this one course. I've just got this set up to be nice and simple, some links to the different modules in here. But as far as how content actually gets into the course, for that I'm going to make a new announcement. And there's 2 things about the editor here that allows me to come over to the announcement. And I'll tell you one of them right now, which is the rich content editor in Canvas. There's only one. Good engineers are lazy engineers. You don't build the same thing more than once, right? We have really good engineers. which means even though I'm editing an announcement here, this is exactly how I would create a quiz question, or create assignment instructions, or post to a discussion, or edit my homepage, right? It's one editing experience everywhere I go. Same buttons, same tools, same order. So for this announcement, I could say something like, hello class. And then some of these buttons, if you've edited a Word document in the last 25 years, will look quite familiar to you. So I can make stuff bold and italic, ooh, right? That's not the rich stuff. That's the things we expect to be there. If I want to get rich content in, I can turn to some of these tools like saying, please go take, and then instead of just saying this quiz, I can actually use the links tool over here to link to any part of my Canvas course. So in this case, I want to send them to a quiz. So I'm going to send them to this brains, bodies, and behaviors quiz. And now my content is actually functioning as navigation. And more importantly, because that link was created right here in the rich content editor, most of us tend to teach the same courses term after term, right? We teach fall and then spring and then fall and then spring and on like this. So when I roll this course over to next semester, that link will update automatically, right? It's not going to point back to the previous term's quiz. It's always going to know which semester we're in. Similarly, over here, I have this files tool where I can upload any new files or see any of the files that I've already uploaded. So I'm going to just embed this PDF, and we'll see in a minute how Canvas handles embedding documents. And then for images, anybody ever need an image for your course and you just like go to Google, you search for something on Google Images, right? Surely no. I'm sure everyone is shaking their head vigorously. The camera didn't see anybody nod because that would be copyright infringement. We want to enable right behavior. We're not all artists. We don't all have stuff provided by a publisher or some facility on campus. So we have this built-in Flickr search. And what this lets me do is search only items that are tagged Creative Commons. So if you've never used Creative Commons, this is just a nice way for talented people to say, I made a thing, you're allowed to use it. And because this is searching only Creative Commons items, I know anything that comes up here, it's okay for me to use in my course. So I'm gonna find this nice sleepy guy. It drops it right in. If it's too big or too small, I can click and drag to resize it, just like you'd expect to be able to do, right? I don't have to go out to Flickr, I don't have to find the image and download it and come back to my course, then re-upload it and figure out where I uploaded it and then link it, right? I just say I need an image and now I have an image. Likewise for YouTube users, I know you guys are in Office 365 school, but some people use YouTube in their course sometimes. A little bit, yeah? So instead of going to YouTube, getting the embed code, going back to the LMS, opening up the HTML editor, pasting in the embed code, I can just say, give me a video about pandas. That video about pandas. And then it drops it in. I didn't have to go and mess with the embed code. I didn't even have to leave Canvas, right? I could just say, I need a YouTube video, and it brings the YouTube video in. Stan also had mentioned openness and adherence to these open standards. So you guys are probably familiar at least a little bit with building blocks in Blackboard, right? Each platform kind of has their way of doing integrations. There's an open standard called LTI. It actually predates us as a company. It's been around for a long time, but no one was really using it because they wanted to push their kind of proprietary thing forward. And when we were first building Canvas, we said, we know we need to go with these open standards because open always wins in the long run, right? It means more people can integrate. It means everybody's on a level playing field. This YouTube tool is actually not part of Canvas. Our engineers built this as an LTI. It is completely separate. But the reason that I'm highlighting that is you can see how native this looks, right? It looks completely integrated. It feels like it's a tool that's just like every other tool in the toolbar. And this is how tightly coupled an LTI can be. It doesn't have to feel clunky. It doesn't have to feel separate and third party. It can look and feel like a totally native part of the application. And then the last one I will kind of highlight in here is the media recorder. So you may not have something out on YouTube or Vimeo or one of these other tools. And I just want to do a little talking head. So I can give Canvas access to my webcam and microphone. Oh, I got like a mirror thing going up there. And I can do this from the mobile device as well. This is what I mean when I say we went with the mobile apps so that we can do things like this from the mobile device. And at this terrible angle, I can say, hello students, make sure you watch that panda video up there. I know this course is called Intro to Psychology, but it's really just all about pandas. And then if I'm happy with that, I can save it and just drop it right in. I don't have to use external software. I don't have to go to another tool. I just want to get my talking head in there. If you notice, there's also an upload button in that tool. So if I did already prepare something, if I was given something by one of my colleagues or from my publisher, I don't have to go to a different place to upload video that I record video from. It's all just in one tool. Then I'm going to go ahead. Yeah.
Is there an equation editor in that toolbar?
There is, and I will show it to you here. But you have to promise not to make fun of how bad my math has gotten since I've been out of graduate school. So the equation editor in Canvas is actually quite clever because there's two standards for doing math on the web that are happening in the background here. So I'll do something really simple so I don't embarrass myself and just say the cube root of 9, because I know that that is actual math. If you're really advanced and you want to just type LaTeX directly in, you actually can type LaTeX directly in. But I'm going to just go ahead and drop that in. And what's cool about this is for those of us who are sighted, that just looks like an image. But because there's a standard underneath that called MathML, a screen reader can read that. So when a screen reader gets to that, it doesn't say image.jpg or math.image, right? It would actually read it as cube root of 9. And then looking at my finished announcement here, I've got my very exciting formatted text, my link to my quiz. And I had mentioned when I dropped in that PDF, we would see how that looks. So one of the things we do in Canvas is we will actually render most common document types, so PDFs, rich text, Word documents, PowerPoint slides, Excel spreadsheets, these kinds of things. We will just render them right in line. And because we're taking care of the rendering, that means we can do this on mobile as well. So if students are on the go and they want to review PowerPoint slides or a Word document or a PDF or something, they don't have to download it. They don't have to wait till they're someplace with special software. They can just view it right inside Canvas, right? So I can see this document right here. And then I've got my Flickr image, my YouTube video, my fantastically advanced mathematics. And I want to play just a couple seconds of this YouTube video. And I don't think sound's going to come through the room, but what I really want to highlight there is, oh God, he's so cute. We have the best mascot. The thing that's significant about that video is when I pressed play, it like just played, right? Like there wasn't an ad for Geico or something silly before that. So we actually cut the pre-roll ad off. And then at the end, that big grid of related videos that sends students down a rabbit hole into YouTube nightmare land, we cut that off too, right? So you can use content that's already on YouTube, or you can put your content on YouTube and feel more comfortable using it in an academic environment without worrying that students are going to go off to the rest of the cesspool that is the internet. So I mentioned before we came in here, there's two really significant things to me about the rich content editor. One is for you all, it's the same experience everywhere, right? So we just learned how to create an announcement, but now we could do content pages, quiz questions, assignment instructions, discussion posts, same editor everywhere you're creating content. The second part of that is that's the tool students get. So when students are posting discussions, when they're submitting assignments, when they're answering essay quiz questions, they get those tools, those buttons, that order, right? They can use the media recorder. They have the exact same kind of interface. So not only can you provide rich content to them, you can expect them to provide it back because you know what tools that they have. Yes?
Can I drag and drop multiple files in there?
You can. Yeah, so in the files area, if you have like 20 things on your desktop and you want to just throw them all in there.
I want to pull them under one at a time.
Yep.
So I'm going to go back to the math. Not that I love
No.
math or anything. But I've worked with MathML recently for our online courses. For a while, the LaTeX server was unreachable. So none of the equations that were previously loaded would be displayed, right?
So what tool are you using to do that?
It was the equation editor in Blackboard.
Okay.
And so for the previously created quiz questions that included the equations, they would not be displayed because the LaTeX server was unreachable for whatever reason. I think it had something to do with the connection between Blackboard and our server and LaTeX server. So is that the same way that Canvas operates? It establishes a connection with the LaTeX server? Or?
So this is all handled in Canvas as part of the application.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with the way Blackboard does it, but this is part of the Canvas application.
Okay.
When our founders, they're both computer scientists, right? So their math is probably better than this. When they were looking around, they actually weren't in love with any of the math tools that were out there. So they built that from scratch. So that's a native part of Canvas completely.
Okay, and just one more question. Sorry to be harping on this.
No,
but,
please.
When students have quizzes and they have to solve equations, so they have the equation editor in the answer box as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if they're using the rich content editor, they get the same tools, the same buttons exactly like we just saw.
So a student can answer a question with some video from YouTube and an equation.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
So I'm going to jump to my modules here. We won't really look at the kind of content creation process in any of the other tools since, like I said, it's exactly the same everywhere we go. But I want to talk just a little bit about kind of course organization. Modules to me are really the way to organize a course. You can just dump stuff in the files area. I've seen lots of business courses where they say, here's a bunch of case studies, we're going to go through these, and they're just sort of lumped in there. The reason I always use modules myself and encourage modules to the faculty that I train is because you sort of get some goodness for free in here. So for one thing, I can make as many or as few of these as I like. So I've set mine up to be called lessons, right? I have lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, but these could just as easily be chapters if we're following a textbook, or projects if it's a project-based course, right? I can have as many as I like. They can be as big or as small as I like them to be. And I get some nice organizational things in here, like each item tells you through its icon exactly what it is. So just like we saw in the to-do list, just like we saw in the calendar, I know exactly what these are because they have a consistent iconography across Canvas, which means I can get out of the habit of naming all of my discussions, discussion dash whatever, and all of my assignments, assignment colon whatever, and all of my quizzes, quiz hyphen whatever, right? Because you can always tell wherever you're looking what type of content that item is. I also automatically have the due dates and the scores show up. So anything that has a due date or a score, it'll show up in the modules automatically. And remember, if I change that, it updates here automatically, so I don't have to come back and make that change. I get a nice drag and drop convenience. So if I'm looking at this and I say, you know what, I really want this content page to be first, and then this discussion to come after that video, right? And that's a silly thing, right? It's like, oh, you can drag and drop to reorganize. But it should be, right? It should be that trivial at any point in the course, even after you've started teaching, right? Even if I have real live students in here taking this course, I should be able to say, you know what, next week I want this quiz to come before the discussion, or I want the discussion to come after this video. And I should be able to make those changes at any time. Sir?
Yeah, say I make a change, I've got multiple sections, courses, and I want to make a change in one. How easy is it to get it from the current section, class of teaching, to another example?
So in this case, are you talking about teaching, like, I teach 3 sections of Psychology 101, and are they all identical? Yeah. So you can have 3 separate courses where each one is an island, and you can make them as similar as not as you like. What I would probably do in that case is leverage something we call cross-listing. So in Canvas, courses hold content, and what we call sections hold your actual students. And one course can have as many sections in it as you want. So instead of you having to maintain 3 separate courses that are all identical anyway, you can just have one course that has all 3 sections in it. So then you don't have to make 3 changes, you make 1 change, because all those students are actually viewing the same course. And then we have some clever features you can use, and I'll actually show you right here in my assignment. So say I have a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and a Wednesday, Friday section, right? Something like this. Well, my students probably have different due dates. So now I have one assignment, but I don't want them all turning it in at the same time. Canvas has this very clever notion of what we call differentiated due dates. So I can say, everyone has this one due date, but then my face-to-face section has a different due date of, let's say, the 19th, right? So now everyone in this 001 section will see their due date, their syllabus, their to-do list, their announcements, their modules, everything will have their due date. And then everyone else in the other sections will see this different due date. And then let's say one of my students comes to me with a sob story, and I feel really bad for Aaron, and I want to give Aaron a different due date of the 20th. Now Aaron will see Aaron's due date, everybody in section 001 sees their due date, and everybody else sees their due date, right? So I have one assignment, one gradebook column, but I can give it as many different due dates as I want. So that way the things that need to be the same, like the content, can stay the same, and then the things that need to be different, like the due dates, can be as customized as they need to be. While I'm in here, I'll actually just kind of quickly mention again for my assignment instructions, same rich content editor we've seen everywhere else. Canvas assignments can be set up to take a variety of submissions. So you can have students author directly in using the rich content editor. They can submit a website URL, and we'll actually just capture a snapshot of that website and then provide a link back to the live document. They can use the media recorder, which they can do from the web app or from their mobile phone. So you could send them out into the world and say your assignment submission is just a video that you record directly. And then of course, kind of traditional file uploads like we'll see here. And then Canvas assignments also can be done as group assignments and as peer reviews as well. And then we'll see in the speed grader some of the cool things that peer review enables.
Can I just ask a quick question? In terms of the differentiated due dates, does that also apply for other areas of the course? Let's say you're doing announcements. Maybe your one class, your one section is a little bit of a sequence. All content can be differentiated?
So anything that has a due date can get a differentiated due date. And then for things like messaging, you can select the target of that. So if I wanted to send a message to my whole course, I could do it just by section or just by individual. So I could say send it to all students or send it to all students in section 001 or just Aaron. Yeah.
And can you also then update, let's say, we've had whatever, a snowstorm or something, and we need to adjust due dates. Will that also then go across all of the sections, or?
So the date's going to change wherever you make that date change. So if you change for one assignment that's impacting multiple sections, then yes, it would. Otherwise, you would change each one, right? So if you want us to treat them all as one thing, we will. And if you want to keep them separate, you can do that as well. One other thing I will mention in the modules, down here toward my later modules, I actually have these prerequisites and requirements set up. So I teach graduate level courses most of the time, so they're kind of hippy-dippy. If my students want to turn in the final on day one, that's fine, whatever. Like, it's Colorado, we just let people do that. But not every course can be quite that loosey-goosey, right? So you can have due dates, of course, on things and kind of control the speed that students progress through a course. But you can also set up these prerequisites and requirements where I can say, maybe I want a student to view a certain item or submit a certain item, or maybe they have to not only submit a certain item, but they have to get a minimum score on that item, right? Maybe I want to actually restrict it so that they have to do these items in this order, right? So I can take a very, very open course and then start to kind of focus it down and say, I want them to go through in a specific order, or I want them to meet certain minimum requirements or access certain content before they can go on to later content, right? So you can kind of be wide open and then really start to funnel that down. And then some functionality we won't get to go into, but I'll just mention quickly that we added last fall, something called Mastery Paths, which actually allows you to say, depending on how a student did on this assignment, then what do they see next, right? So they get a 9 out of 10 on this quiz, they go directly to the next module. They get a 6 out of 10 on this quiz, maybe they have to do some remedial content before they can go on to the next module, right? So you can set up these branching paths, and then once those paths are in place, students move through them automatically based on their performance. But I wanted to come here into the speed grader. I mentioned this from the to-do list. So as an instructor, if I had pressed on an item on the to-do list that I was grading, it would bring me right here to the speed grader. As a student, it would take me to where I make my submission. But the speed grader does two really significant things. Again, kind of one from the instructor side, one from the student side. When I first was taking graduate classes, not that long ago, but it seems longer and longer all the time, my instructors actually let me submit via email. And every single one of them had their crazy kind of arcane spell I had to cast to get that assignment to them, right? It had to come from my student email address. It had to be named in a crazy way. It had to have my student number in it sometimes, but not all the time, right? And I don't know about any of you, but I probably messed that up about 100% of the time. The speed grader, for me as an instructor now, teaching courses in Canvas, the thing that this is doing that's significant to me is context. So when I come in here, I know exactly who the student is. I know exactly when they submitted. I can see that this particular submission was late. I know exactly which assignment this is, which course it's in, what the due date for this assignment was, right? So I'm spending 0 mental cycles figuring out who this is, what course this is for, what they're turning it in for, did they turn it in on time, right? All that context is presented in the speed grader so that when I look at this, I'm focused right away on evaluating my student. And when I come over here and I see that the file they submitted is called homework1.docx, which would not do me any good if they had emailed that to me, right? I don't really have to worry about that because Canvas is rendering that document right here in the speed grader. The speed grader is another place where our engineers have not forced you to learn multiple tools. So even though this happens to be an assignment where a document was submitted, if my student had submitted a video, or if they were posting to discussion, or if I was grading an essay question on a quiz, same speed grader, same tools, same button, same order, right? So I don't have to learn different grading interfaces to grade different kinds of student work. Same experience all the time. If I have a rubric and I want to just tap through this, right, I don't have to add up the scores. I can have it just calculate that score for me. Or if I want to override it, I can say, I know this is what the rubric says, but I want to change this to something else. I can leave free-form comments over here on the side, as well as doing speech to text and using that same media recorder. So if I want to actually leave my students private audio-video feedback right here inside the speed grader, I can do that. And then because this is a document, I can grab the pencil tool. You're not supposed to use red anymore. It's too negative. Students don't like it. But I can grab the blue and send a nice clear message about how I feel about this part. I don't really like that part. Maybe I want to make sure they understand exactly what that comment means. So I'm going to leave a comment over here and say, this means I don't like this part. Right? I can strike out. I can highlight. Right, so I'm getting the kind of experience that I would have if I had printed this out or my student had given me a paper document and I was going to mark it up and then I was going to return it to them. So just like with the rich content editor, when I came in here, I said there's 2 things that the speed grader does. For me as the instructor, it creates this place where I can evaluate a student quickly with context and then get this feedback back to them. For the student, what I feel like this really gives them is what I think of as sort of distributed office hours. Because when a student looks at their feedback, this is what they see, right? So they see these comments, they see these markups, they see how the rubric is filled out, they see these comments, but more importantly, they can actually come in and comment themselves. They can reply to this comment. They can come in here and be part of the feedback loop, right? So that they're not wondering, where do I find my feedback? How do I get comments back to my instructor? Is this private? How am I communicating with them? Right? All of this context is wrapped up for them, and that conversation can go on as long as you want it to. We can have this back and forth just for the day. Maybe I don't answer them at all. It's just a one-way push. Or maybe I want to have this conversation ongoing for the entire length of the course, right? So I can sort of take that office hours experience where Stan and I sit down and we talk about his paper, and I can sort of blow that up over time and space, and we can have that conversation ongoing.
So can students download this marked up assignment and save it on their device?
Yeah, so if you've marked up this document, there's a standard underneath this. It basically comes out as a marked up PDF. So they can download the unmarked up version or the marked up version. Yeah.
I know this may be obvious, but in my area we use a lot of quizzes, QA citations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're just looking at assignment right now. We're going to jump to quizzes in a second. Yeah.
If I was to use this tool and I wanted to add a marking sheet attached to it, can I attach something to that so they can see it, or is it something I have to upload in the comments?
So if you want to add additional documents, I can upload additional stuff. So if I wanted to return an example paper, or maybe here's some references you can use for draft number 2 or something like that, just additional files I want to return to them, I can attach those right in here. Yeah.
Just related to that, would it be possible if it was just generalized feedback, you could upload one file to all students for that assignment?
So file uploads would have to be done individually because we don't ever want to accidentally distribute something. The default in SpeedGrader is that the expectation is that it's 1-to-1 or 1 to a group if it's a group assignment. If I wanted to just give a file to all of my students, I would probably either make that part of my course content or maybe send it to them as an announcement or a message and just say like, hey, now that you've all done critical thinking paper number 1, I'd love for you guys to review this PDF or whatever that document might be. Yeah.
So in the speed grader you had it, docx file. For example, if there's an SQL file or if there's a shell script, it's still a text file, but the extension is different.
Yeah, so we won't ever execute code because there's just huge.
No, not execute,
Yeah.
but just to display.
So yeah, because those don't come across as their MIME type isn't just regular text. It comes across as whatever it is. So SQL or whatever kind of, if it was like Python or Ruby or something. So what we would do there is allow you to download those either individually or in bulk. So if I want to pull down just this student's file, I can just say download it. Or from the assignment, I can say just give me all of the submissions, right? So if I have students who are, like I used to teach an office class, we can't render an Access database in the web browser. I need to open those in Access, so I would just say download all of those at once. And it breaks them out into folders automatically.
Can you quickly show what if scenarios? Or are we going there next?
Oh, and there eventually?
You got 10 minutes.
A question about this view. So inside one of those lessons, the word psychology, philosophy, the word epistemology is in there somewhere. Is there a way to search the content of these modules from this page? Or to search the content of all modules?
I can't search across all of my content. This is something we've kind of bandied about, like doing a course-wide search. Part of the issue with it is that a lot of the time searching on individual words is useful if it's a highly technical term and really less useful if it's any kind of generic word, even like from the most common words. So it's something we've kind of tossed around doing. It's not in there today. There are some workarounds and some third-party tools that try and give that sort of functionality, but it's the same kind of a problem where it's really good if you're looking for exactly that word, right? But if it's in there, if it's a course about psychology, that word might be in there 1,000 times, and then it doesn't necessarily help you actually narrow down. So with the modules, we're trying to help provide some context to, oh, if the word epistemology is on this page, this is what that page is about, and this is the context of the lesson that it's in.
So your tombstone information about each piece of those modules as a title and a due date, can it have a description as well?
So you can enter what we just call a text header. So I can enter a module item that is freeform content or freeform text. So I can say something like, and then if I want that to be the description for, say this item, right? So I'm going to have kind of freeform text in here. We don't want content to appear inside the modules, like images and videos and things, because then you essentially don't have a backbone anymore. Now you just have content. Get that guy out of there. So let me quickly jump to take a quick look at the gradebook here, kind of from the instructor side first. So my favorite thing about the Canvas gradebook is that I really spend no time thinking about the Canvas gradebook. I've taught in 6 different LMSs now, and I've done support and training for like 9. But the Canvas gradebook is nice in that it does not require setup. It is not another thing you have to think about. It exists because my course exists. So if I create an assignment, it gets a gradebook column. Next semester, I decide I don't want to have that assignment anymore, the gradebook column goes away. Right? So this isn't a thing that I have to micromanage. It's just a reflection of my course content. So I know
Micromanage it if I want to.
you can micromanage it if you want to.
In other words, can I create extra columns in it that students might be able to see, might not be able to see, use them in calculations?
Several different questions in there. So you can create arbitrary columns, but they have to be linked to an assignment item. And the reason for that is a couple-fold. One is the assignments don't have to have a submission. So just because an assignment exists doesn't mean there's a way for a student to turn anything in. So an assignment might be, you have to read this chapter by Friday, right? The reason that we've gone that way instead of just shoving arbitrary columns into the gradebook is because assignments can optionally have score values, and they can optionally have dates. So telling a student, do this when it has the due date means it shows up in their to-do list and on their syllabus and in their calendar, right? So they get all of that other sort of organizational goodness, even if they're not going to be turning you in a physical or an electronic document or a submission of some kind. Calculated columns is one of those things that we have chosen to do this in a way that we believe is more transparent sort of to the instructor as well as the student. So if I want to do something like, say, weighted grading, like I've got this course set up, to be broken into a few groups. So I have exercises and quizzes and discussions. And you can see I've got weighting for each of those. I can also do assignment rules. So in this one, I am dropping the lowest quiz in this group, but under no circumstances will I ever drop the Introduction to Psychology quiz. Right? So I can set up these rules that I, as the instructor, can look at this and I say, I know exactly how this is being calculated. When my student looks at this, more importantly, they also know this can be dropped, this can't, this is worth this many points, or it's worth this much weighting, right? So it's very transparent to everyone how that final score is ultimately being reached. And then back here in the gradebook on the instructor view, there are a few things that you might actually come in here to use that are still pretty neat. If I want to just drag and drop to reorganize this, I can, right? So just like I can in the modules, if I want to reorganize my gradebook, I can still do that. I can import and export, of course, if I want to. But the one that I'll make sure to highlight here is probably a faculty favorite, is this message students who. So I want to get a message to my students. I don't want to figure out what their email addresses are. I don't want to have to go copy paste them in Outlook. I don't want to realize that I put them all in the to field when I meant to put them in the BCC field, right? So this is automatically going to send a private message to the students that meet this criteria. So I could say I want to message everybody that hasn't submitted yet. Maybe they scored more or less than a certain amount on this assignment, right? Maybe Annie already came and spoke to me about this, so I don't need to send her this message, so I can remove her even though she meets the criteria, right? But my goal is to communicate something to them. It's not to find their email addresses, go to Outlook, copy and paste their email addresses, and send them an email, right? I just want to get them a message.
Can you see multiple attempts, say a quiz or something, and they attempted it, say, 5 times? Can you see like all 5 of their attempts in the gradebook?
So if you allowed multiple attempts, yeah, all that history is maintained. So if they were allowed to take it 5 times and they've only done 3 of them, you could see all 3 of those individual attempts. Yeah, as well as the statistics for all of them. I want to quickly pop over to the student side of this with some of the time we have remaining here. And I'll kind of highlight as well, in the settings of every course, every instructor has this tool called the student view. And what's neat about this is this doesn't just turn off my editing powers. This has actually transformed me into a fake student called test student. I get a line in the gradebook, I can submit assignments, I can take quizzes, I can post discussions, right? I can see what it's like to take my course. Would my course make sense if I didn't know all the things I know? Did I set this up the way that I think I set this up, right? So now I can actually kind of live the whole course experience. It's really obvious that I'm in the student view because we get this nice border. If I make a bunch of changes and I want to start over, I can reset the test student so that now it's like I'm coming in as a brand new student to this course. And this really gets you out of having to contact your administrator, your LMS IT person and say, hey, can you enroll John Fake student into my course? But the reason I wanted to come in here for the grades is to show a little bit about the student view of this. So of course students can see their grades and then they can choose how they organize just like you can. They're obviously seeing only their grades, not a spreadsheet view like you would as an instructor. But one of the things that my students in particular really loved when we first moved to Canvas is they can come in and say, what if I got a 4 on this? What if I got an 18 on this? What if I got a 11 out of 10 on this? I think I'm going to do really good on that one, right? And then it tells them this is what your grade would be. This is not your real score. But more importantly, this is sticky. So I can, as a student, come in here on day 1 and say, I need to get a B+ in this course to maintain my scholarship or to maintain my enrollment in the Honor Society or something like this. And I could fill this whole thing out. And then as the course goes on and I'm getting real feedback and real scores from my instructor, those real grades are slotting in there, right? So I can use this not just as a way to review the grades I have, but as a planning tool for how I want to try and do in this course. And then if something allows multiple attempts, right, I can always go back, try and get a better score. And I can use this to sort of really plan out what is my final score going to look like, as opposed to getting to week 15 of a 16-week term and then finding out what my final score actually is. So it looks like I have 3 minutes left, and it sounds like we need to be pretty strict on time, yeah? So there's definitely other things I could talk about and highlight, but if there's some questions, yeah.
I have a question about sort of like organizational-wide messages. Like we often find that, the college-wide survey would be posted on our Blackboard, I guess. Is that possible in Canvas?
So if you want to send a message to every student, yeah. So we call those global announcements. And you can scope those, so I can say I want to send a message to everyone, or just to every teacher, or to every student. And you could even scope them down to departments. So I want to send it to every student and teacher, but just in the math department.
there an at-a-glance view of how everyone is progressing in your course?
Yeah, so this is a demonstration course. So my analytics, since my students are fake, they've been very lazy. But what you're seeing here is the built-in instructor view of the analytics, where I'm seeing activity over time, a submission breakdown over time, late, missing, and on time, a box and whisker graph of grades broken down. And then for my students, I can actually go into a student level view of this, where I'm seeing all of that same data for just this student. You can see this student. You can see your own analytics, right? This is your information. It exists because you created it. So a student can actually come in here and see their own data, right? And then, of course, as an instructor, you can see everybody's.
And as an administrator, can you pull it for multiple courses?
Yeah, just pull it all out in bulk. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See, yeah.
Migration, let's say we switch from Blackboard to you tomorrow, migration.
That sounds great.
Like I've got some huge question pools, for example, for quizzes where they randomly pull, thousands of questions, all different types. Like, what's the migration like to get all that?
Yeah, so there's no question when we entered the market who was sort of the biggest company at that time. So we have really slick migration tools for the open standards as well as those proprietary formats like Blackboards. So we can do bulk migration for you, where we will take all your courses and port them over. And those tools are available to you as well. So you can actually, in a course, just say, I want to import my Blackboard course. Yeah, so it can be either or both. So I feel like I'm going to get hooked off the stage in a minute.
Student retention and student performance. How the instructor could identify students at risk and send them a message?
So for an instructor, they would probably go through those analytics. There's some more things that are in there that I don't have time to highlight right now, but you have scope data for your whole course as well as individual students that you might want to see how they're performing based on things like their grades, their submissions, how much they've been logging in, how much they're engaging with content. All that data is serviced for you.
We're going to have to put it in, unfortunately, because it's not just that, but there's actually a class waiting on top of that. So
thank you guys very much.
Fill out your sheets, please. Fill out your sheets and leave them at the front, and I'll ask everyone to vacate.